The Cathar were a marvel of cosmic evolution. Their crystalline, silicon-based forms shimmered with an internal light that pulsed in rhythm with their complex thought patterns. Each member of the species was a walking geometric wonder, bodies composed of segmented, faceted structures that caught and refracted light in hypnotic patterns. Unlike the chaotic, soft-bodied creatures that dominated most life-bearing worlds, the Cathar existed as living crystal, perceiving reality through resonance, energy patterns, and pure, unsullied logic. To the Cathar, biological life was an aberration, messy, inefficient, and fundamentally weak. Organic beings were slave to their chemical processes, their emotions, their needs for sustenance and reproduction. The Cathar had evolved beyond such primitive concerns. Their culture was built upon rigid hierarchies, unwavering logic, and relentless expansion. They communicated through precisely modulated crystalline resonances, each vibration carrying dense packets of information that would take organic beings paragraphs to express. Art, as biological species understood it, was a foreign concept. Individuality was merely a designation of function within the greater whole. Their physiology granted them advantages that organic life could only dream of. They were virtually impervious to temperature extremes, could survive in vacuum or crushing pressure, and radiation washed over them like a gentle breeze. Only specific sonic frequencies or catastrophic structural impacts posed any real threat. For sustenance, they required only specific mineral resources to maintain and expand their crystal lattice structures, a far more efficient process than the constant consumption and waste production of organic metabolism. Commander Forlag stood upon the bridge of the colonization flagship Inevitability, his crystalline form noticeably denser and more complex than those around him. His structure bore the patterns of countless successful logical campaigns, each new layer of his crystalline body marking victories and accumulated knowledge. His facets had multiplied over centuries of service, giving his form an almost intimidating complexity that lesser Cathar found difficult to process. He emanated authority through his very molecular arrangement. Before him, holographic displays presented target 734 Gamma, the third planet of an unremarkable yellow star. Earth. His data assessment was complete and unambiguous. A Class 2 biological hazard with primitive, chaotic ecosystems, but rich in easily accessible silicate and rare earth mineral deposits. The dominant species had achieved rudimentary technological development, barely level 0.8 on the threat scale. Their most advanced weapons would scarcely register on the Inevitability's defensive systems. This mission qualified as standard resource integration, a procedure the Cathar had performed countless times across the galaxy. Forlag processed the mission parameters with cold efficiency. The statistical models predicted 99.87% probability of success, with minimal deviation from baseline projections. The organic inhabitants were merely obstacles to be bypassed or neutralized, depending on which approach required less energy expenditure. Their concept of colonization had nothing to do with coexistence. The Cathar would deploy massive terraforming processors to convert the environment and extract resources, disregarding native life entirely. A completely logical approach. The Cathar fleet moved in perfect geometric formation, each ship positioned with mathematical precision. The vessels themselves were studies in functional design. No aesthetic considerations marred their angular perfection. They were massive crystalline structures encased in metallic alloys, propelled by energies that warped the fabric of space-time itself. The interior of the Inevitability hummed with controlled energy, its passageways sterile and angular, devoid of anything but functional necessity. Crew members interface directly with ship systems, their movements synchronized and silent, logical precision. Deploy atmospheric sampling drones, Forlag commanded, his crystalline form emanating the precise frequency pattern that carried his orders. Within moments, small, crystalline probes detached from the fleet's advanced ships, descending into Earth's atmosphere. Data streamed back instantaneously, nitrogen, oxygen, trace gases, all within predicted parameters. Gravity and temperature readings likewise confirmed the pre-mission analysis. One data point registered a minor deviation. High density of complex airborne organic particulates detected across multiple sampling points. The system automatically flagged this as biocontaminant level 4, but indicated it remained within acceptable margins for standard filtration systems. Forlag dismissed it as insignificant biological dust, or spores, the chaotic shedding of primitive life forms. Not worth additional processing. Cycles. Atmospheric composition confirmed suitable. Proceed with entry sequence. Forlag ordered, his crystalline structure pulsing with the anticipation of another successful resource acquisition. The massive fleet began its descent toward the blue-green planet, energy shields shimmering as they dispersed atmospheric friction. As predicted, human defensive systems detected their approach. Primitive missiles and energy weapons launched from the surface, only to be effortlessly neutralized by automated defense grids. The resistance was even less effective than projected, confirming the utter inferiority of the planet's defenders. Resistance negligible. Proceeding with landing phase, the tactical officer reported, his crystalline form vibrating with the precise resonance of military efficiency. Forlag selected a landing zone featuring a large, temperate landmass away from major human population centers. The region showed high mineral density and topographical features ideal for initial Spire deployment. The fact that the area was experiencing peak pollen season for multiple plant species was not factored into the decision. This data point was deemed irrelevant to the mission parameters. The fleet touched down with barely a tremor, massive landing struts adjusting perfectly to the terrain. Ramps deployed from the ship's flanks, revealing the sterile Cthar environment within. The clock on the automated mission timer began, 0 hours, 0 minutes. Automated deployment began immediately. Massive robotic units emerged from the capital ships, positioning prefabricated sections of the primary terraforming/processing spire with perfect precision. Cthar engineers, encased in bulky, multi-layered environmental suits designed primarily for vacuum and radiation protection, emerged in specialized vehicles to oversee the connection interfaces. The suits were not designed with biological contamination as a primary concern. Vacuum and radiation had always been the predominant threats in previous colonization efforts. Within 30 minutes, the foundation of the spire was taking shape, a gleaming crystalline structure rising from the Earth's surface. When completed, it would tower over 20 kilometers high, serving as both the command center for the terraforming operation and the primary processing facility for resource extraction. At the 40-minute mark, the first anomalous reports began filtering through the command network. External sensors on ground units and engineer suits were registering frequent alerts for particulate contamination. Cleaning cycles, energy pulses and sonic bursts designed to remove space dust and radiation particles were initiating far more frequently than standard operating procedures dictated. Environmental interference exceeding baseline projections by 17.8%, reported the engineering chief. Cleaning cycles operating at 213% of expected frequency. Log is minor environmental anomaly. Continue deployment. Forlag ordered, still confident in the mission parameters. At the 45-minute mark, the foundational level of the spire was assembled and its internal atmosphere processors and primary filtration systems activated. Initial atmospheric intake began, drawing in Earth's air to be processed and purified for Cthar use within the structure. 15 minutes later, the first serious deviation from mission parameters occurred. Commander, filtration efficiency has dropped below 95%. An engineer reported from the spire's environmental control center. Diagnostics indicate unexpectedly rapid clogging of primary organic filters by complex, resilient protein-based molecules. Multiple filter types are affected simultaneously. On the bridge of the inevitability, Forlag processed this information with a slight vibration of irritation passing through his crystalline form. The biological mess of this planet was proving slightly more troublesome than anticipated. Still, this was merely an inefficiency, not a threat. Divert auxiliary power to enhance sonic purification cycles. Have engineers monitor filter integrity at 15-minute intervals, he ordered. This is a minor deviation, well within acceptable parameters. As the first hour concluded, Forlag remained confident. The spire was 22% complete, slightly behind schedule due to the filtration issues, but still proceeding according to the overall mission timeline. The Cthar colonization of Earth was proceeding logically. The second hour began with escalating reports of system inefficiencies. Despite enhanced purification protocols, filtration efficiency continued to drop, falling below 70% at the 70-minute mark. Critical systems reliant on processed atmosphere, coolant regulators, energy conduits, and precision assembly units began showing minor fluctuations in performance. Automated ground units experienced increasing joint seizures and sensor failures as the abrasive particulate matter overwhelmed their protective seals. At the 75-minute mark, the first truly alarming reports began to surface. Cthar engineers near the Spire base or operating external equipment reported experiencing a subtle, unpleasant internal resonance, described variously as a high-frequency itch or buzz within their crystalline structure. Initially, these reports were isolated and attributed to suit vibrations or sensor malfunctions. Engineering Team 7 reporting unusual internal resonance patterns, the communication officer relayed to Forlag. Medical attributes it to extended planetary exposure and recommends routine recalibration upon shift completion. Forlag acknowledged the report but devoted minimal processing to it. Individual comfort deviations were irrelevant to the mission as long as they remained within functional parameters. By the 90-minute mark, however, the resonance had intensified and spread among all ground teams. Engineers now reported visual observation of microscopic pitting and faint hairline fractures appearing on the surface of their crystalline limbs, particularly near suit seals and ventilation points. Biomonitors confirmed localized structural integrity compromises, minor damage to their actual physical forms, not merely discomfort. Simultaneously, the Spire's efficiency continued to plummet. Coolant systems were operating at 62% capacity. Energy conduits showed fluctuating power levels. Most alarmingly, the automated assembly units were experiencing a 41% failure rate, their precision movements compromised by particulate infiltration. At the 100-minute mark, Forlag could no longer dismiss these reports as minor deviations. The number of malfunctioning units and affected personnel was increasing nonlinearly. This significantly exceeded all pre-mission projections. Something fundamental had been overlooked. Initiate a Level 2 diagnostic on all biocontaminant data, he ordered the Science Division. I require a complete analysis of these particulates and their interaction with our systems. The preliminary analysis took 10 minutes, an eternity by Cthar standards. The science officer's report sent a wave of dissonant vibration through the bridge crew. Commander, the complex organic particulates, definitively identified as various plant pollens, are exhibiting an unexpected catalytic reaction upon contact with Cthar silicon lattice structures, the science officer reported, his own crystalline form showing faint stress patterns. The proteins are not merely physically abrasive. They are chemically aggressive to our silicon biology. They appear to destabilize the lattice bonds at a molecular level, causing resonance stress and microfracturing. This reaction is previously unobserved and unprecedented in our colonization records. As the second hour approached its end, the situation deteriorated rapidly. Reports flooded the bridge. Multiple ground units non-functional. Several engineers reporting significant limb fractures or system failures due to structural compromise. The Spire's core temperature rising as cooling systems failed catastrophically. The situation was approaching crisis point. With growing alarm, Forlag realized he could detect the faint, high-frequency resonance himself through the inevitability's bridge atmosphere. The ship's massive filtration systems, designed for spaceborne threats, were not fully eliminating the incredibly fine, reactive pollen. The contamination had reached the flagship itself. "Halt all ground operations immediately," he ordered, his normally perfect resonance pattern showing discordant vibrations. "Initiate Level 5 biohazard protocols. Recall all surviving personnel to ships." The second hour ended in a state of dawning, logical horror. What had begun as a standard colonization operation was transforming into an unprecedented disaster. The Kthar, who had conquered worlds bathed in radiation and toxic atmospheres, were being undone by something as seemingly insignificant as plant reproductive material. The third hour began with chaos, an almost foreign concept to the hyperlogical Kthar. Communications from surface teams became fragmented. Engineers reported suit breaches caused by their own structural failures, their bodies literally cracking under the stress of the molecular attack. The crystalline structures of exposed personnel were audibly cracking, fine fracture lines spreading like lightning across their once perfect forms. Medical drones deployed, stabilizing resonance fields, but these proved ineffective against the pervasive molecular attack. The Spire's primary systems entered cascading failure mode. Containment alarms blared before falling silent, as even the alarm systems succumbed to the contamination. Aboard the Inevitability, the situation was rapidly deteriorating as well. The resonance intensified sharply on the bridge. Control consoles touched by Kthar operators showed spiderweb cracks radiating from contact points. Internal atmospheric alarms screamed as pollen counts spiked past critical thresholds. The filtration system was completely overwhelmed. Crew members began reporting localized fractures and pain resonance throughout their structures. Forlag himself was not immune. He experienced sharp, piercing resonance points within his own crystalline body. Focusing became difficult as microfractures developed in his cognitive nodes. His logical mind grappled with the sheer speed and totality of the biological assault. The enemy wasn't intelligent or armed with technology. It was the planet's passive respiratory system, its plant life's reproduction mechanism, that was destroying them. At the 150-minute mark, the chief science officer delivered the final, devastating analysis. "Commander, our analysis is complete. The specific proteins in Terran pollen act as hyperaggressive catalysts, causing exponential decay of our silicon lattice structure. The exposure is cumulative and irreversible without complete decontamination and environmental isolation, which is now impossible given the level of atmospheric penetration. Our technology, designed for hard radiation, vacuum, and kinetic threats, is critically vulnerable to this specific form of complex organic molecular attack." Forlag processed the inescapable logic. The mission was not merely compromised, it was doomed. Survival dictated immediate withdrawal, regardless of the resource investment already made. With crystal-clear logic untainted by emotional considerations like pride or stubbornness, he issued Fleet Order Omega, abort colonization. Emergency extraction of all viable personnel. Abandon all non-critical assets, including the Spire. Prepare for maximum warp jump upon reaching minimal safe orbital distance. The retreat was chaotic in a way no Kthar operation had ever been. Ships lifted off raggedly, their perfect formation lost. Some smaller vessels failed to achieve stable thrust due to internal system damage. Surface teams were largely unresponsive. Only a fraction made it back to the ships. The rest remained on the surface, their crystalline forms shattering as the molecular attack reached critical levels. The Inevitability shuddered violently as internal systems crackled and failed during the ascent through the pollen-laden atmosphere. Alarms wailed a discordant symphony of failure throughout the flagship. Crew members with advanced degradation were placed in stasis fields to slow the molecular breakdown of their structures. The crippled fleet finally punched through the upper atmosphere, leaving behind the silent, rapidly failing Spire, a monument to hubris that would soon collapse into crystalline dust. As the 3-hour mark passed, the surviving ships limped away from the seemingly innocuous blue-green planet that had so completely defeated them. The Cthar fleet regrouped at a Lagrange point between Earth and its moon. Damage assessment revealed the catastrophic scope of their defeat. Over 30% of personnel had suffered catastrophic structural failure, death by any definition. Nearly all surface equipment was lost. The Inevitability and other capital ships required extensive decontamination and structural repair. The mission was an unmitigated disaster. Forlag, his own structure showing visible stress fractures but stabilized by the ship's emergency medical systems, oversaw the grim assessment. The precise duration from atmospheric entry to emergency FTL jump, 2 hours, 51 standard minutes. Less than 3 hours on the planet's surface had decimated the fleet that was meant to claim it. As he reviewed sensor logs, scientific reports, and casualty lists, Forlag encountered a concept almost alien to his logical mind: irony. Their crystalline perfection, their resistance to the harshest environments of space, their meticulous planning, all undone by microscopic grains of plant reproductive material. The fragile, chaotic biology they had so disdained possessed a passive defense mechanism more effective than any weapon system they had ever encountered. He contemplated the sheer diversity and aggressive resilience of Earth's biosphere. The pollen was just one component of a planetary ecosystem far more dangerous than they had comprehended. What other microscopic threats lurked there, untested against Cthar biology? What other seemingly innocuous biological processes might prove catastrophic to their crystalline structures? With methodical precision, Forlag prepared the after-action report for transmission to Cthar High Command. He detailed the unexpected, catastrophic molecular catalyst particulate attack encountered. His recommendations were clear and logical. Reclassify Earth as a Level 10 biohazard zone, the highest possible threat level. Standard extermination protocols would be insufficient. Colonization was unviable with current technology. He recommended either developing entirely novel biomolecular shielding technology or complete strategic avoidance of the Terran system. In the days that followed, as the fleet undertook emergency repairs before the long journey home, Forlag often stood on the repaired bridge, observing a holographic image of Earth rotating slowly before him. The data points overlaying it now seemed woefully inadequate, failing to capture the true nature of the world below. It was no longer just Target 734 Gamma. It was an enigma, a testament to the unpredictable power of biological evolution. For perhaps the first time in his long existence, Forlag experienced a novel internal resonance. Not pain, not processing, but a profound acknowledgement of the unknown. The Cthar had sought order and resources. Earth had responded with inherent, passive, chaotic lethality. Their attempt at colonization had lasted a mere 3 hours, defeated not by war or intelligence, but by hay fever on an apocalyptic scale. The silence on the bridge was heavy with the weight of a logical failure as the fleet finally engaged their warp drives, leaving the deadly blue-green world behind. Meanwhile, on the surface of Earth, humans remained completely unaware of their narrow escape from colonization. News reports mentioned a strange light show in the night sky over a remote region, with some locals reporting a mysterious metallic structure that appeared and collapsed within the same day. Scientists investigating the site would find only strange crystalline dust that defied analysis, a dust that peculiarly seemed to dissolve further when exposed to the local pollen-heavy air. The incident would eventually be filed away as an unexplained phenomenon, perhaps an unusual meteor event. None would ever suspect that Earth had been saved not by military might or diplomatic skill, but by the humble, ordinary processes of plant reproduction, a defense mechanism developed not to repel alien invaders, but simply to perpetuate life in its endless, chaotic, resilient forms. In the vastness of space, the Cthar would revise their understanding of biological life. Perhaps there was a certain logic to chaos after all, a resilience in imperfection that their crystalline perfection could not match. Perhaps the messy, inefficient processes they had dismissed contained wisdom beyond their comprehension. Or perhaps they would simply avoid planets with flowering plants. The universe, after all, contained countless worlds. But the Cathar would always remember Earth, the planet that defeated them in 3 hours with nothing more than spring pollen.